Time for an all-new product launch from longtime channel partner and male grooming aficionados, Manscaped. Their all-new Chairman Pro electric foil shaver gives you the unbeatable feeling of a fresh barbershop shave without having to leave the comfort of your own home. Visit manscaped.com/skillup for 20% off plus free shipping. Click below to check it out or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers, wherever in the world you are, I hope you're doing fine. Me, I'm in sunny LA for a thing that I can't talk about yet, so do forgive the different mic quality you're no doubt hearing. I'm staying at the foot of Beverly Hills, and yes, I have seen some famous people. For example, I had breakfast in the same room as Marlo Stanfield from The Wire. And if you know how much of a Wire fan I am, you'd know that it took every ounce of my effort to resist the urge to interrupt that man while he was mid-bagel. Anyway, I digress. We're here to talk about some video games. And what is Sony talking about? Well, I'm sure they'd much rather be talking about their shiny new console, the PS5 Pro, but instead, they're still talking about Concord. It is, of course, that very exciting time of the year where all the big corporations are talking about how their finances are going, and Sony were very likely prepared to answer a bunch of questions about Concord, the game that lived for just 3 weeks despite costing Sony hundreds of millions of dollars. When the topic of Concord came up during an earnings call, the president of Sony Group, Hiroki Totoki, who is also the CFO and COO, he's a busy guy, he had this to say, quote, "Currently, we are still in the process of learning, and basically, with regards to new IP, of course, you don't know the result until you actually try it," end quote. Oh man, if only this dude had opened up, I don't know, YouTube one time and listened to the cavalcade of unanimous feedback from everyone with a microphone yelling, "Delay this, make it free to play, make some heroes that we'd actually want to play as." Anyway, he continued, quote, "So for us, for our reflection, we probably need to have a lot of gates, including user testing and internal evaluation and the timing of such gates, and then we need to bring them forward, and we should have done those gates much earlier than we did," end quote. And look, I'm glad they arrived at these conclusions, because when I first checked out Concord, I said that yeah, there's definitely like a decent game here for sure, but it obviously needs more time in the oven when it comes to modes and maps and the general finessing of its offering, especially given that it was asking for an upfront premium in a space that has a number of highly competent free-to-play offerings. If Totoki's comments are anything to go by, Sony now realize that the beta and whatever internal evaluations they had to do really had to come much sooner if Concord was to have any chance of success. Sadly, hindsight is 2020, and the game is now one of the biggest video game flops of all time, and a studio of nearly 200 experienced developers is gone, with all those people out of work. Totoki also said, quote, "Also, we have a siloed organization, so going beyond the boundaries of those organizations in terms of development and also sales, I think that could have been much smoother. Helldivers 2 was a huge hit, while Concord ended up being shut down. We gained a lot of experience and learned a lot from both. We intend to share the lessons learned from our successes and failures across our studios, including in the areas of title development management, as well as the process of continually adding expanded content and scaling the service after its release so as to strengthen our development management system," end quote. Clearly, he's implying that some knowledge sharing needs to start happening within PlayStation, which seems to be what they're doing at this point. In the past few months, several higher-ups from Bungie have started to become integrated within the broader Sony group, seemingly indicating that they are positioning people who know a lot more about this stuff to have some oversight over the various projects. This chunk of the investor Q&A was wrapped up with Totoki making sure people knew that PlayStation was still in the business of making single-player games, thankfully, which he called, quote, "our strengths, and which have a higher predictability of becoming hits due to our proven IP," end quote. Elsewhere in the call, Sony's finance chief said that PlayStation will, quote, "continue releasing major single-player game titles every year from next fiscal year onwards," end quote. So don't fret, we'll have Insomniac, Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, and Bend each taking turns, like a Call of Duty production line, only making, more than one game, hopefully. Oh, and by the way, Sony's finances are doing pretty well at the moment. Hardware sales have fallen by 2 million units since last year, but the upside is that they're more profitable now due to a bunch of factors like manufacturing and exchange rates. PS5 game sales are up a massive 12%, with shoutouts to Black Myth Wukong being a big mover, and Astrobot has sold 1.5 million units since launch, which is nowhere near enough. I know a lot of people are probably on the fence about that one, given its price tag and whatever, but tell you what, man, it's 10 hours, and it's like the best 10 hours you're gonna have. Full stop. It's amazing. Please go out and grab it. Okay, moving on to everyone's favorite litigators and occasional game makers, Nintendo. According to their financial reports, they're seeing an expected drop in Switch sales, as we discussed last week. But in their Q&A with investors, they've had some very heartening and sagely comments to make about the wider industry trend of rising development costs. When quizzed about costs, Mario creator and representative director Shigeru Miyamoto had this to say, quote, it's a long quote by the way, but it's totally worth it, so here it is. Our research and development expenses have been increasing each year. Since our scale of development has grown, a corresponding increase in costs is, in some respects, inevitable. However, our belief is that what we create is more important than the amount spent on development. We continue refining our products until we are confident that we have created something that our consumers will be satisfied with. With that in mind, what is important is to find ideas that are worth honing, and this has not changed since the era of the Nintendo Entertainment System. One thing we are sure about is that it should be something which has not existed in the past. The more you polish something that has never existed before, the more value it brings. We believe that it is important to nurture developers who take this unique concept to heart, allocate funds to development if necessary, and release games only when we are confident in the product, and repeat this process over and over again. In the entertainment business, it is possible to create appealing products based on intriguing ideas without incurring significant costs. Even in the case of video games, with the current technology, it is possible to create fun games with a small number of developers in a short period of time. We believe it is important to not lose sight of this perspective, end quote. Wow, on the one hand, a very obvious stance to have when it comes to making video games for people's enjoyment. On the other hand, can like every other major publisher and investor please like print this quote and plaster it all over their office, put it at the backs of your toilet cubicles so people have to stare at it multiple times a day, because there is absolutely no point in investing hundreds of millions of dollars into a game unless you are sure that game is going to do some big things. Just spend a fraction of that like remaking Bloodborne or bringing back that cancelled Sam Barlow Legacy of Kain game, thank you very much. Jumping over to the more sinister side of Nintendo now, remember when they finally got their papers in order and decided to take the Palworld developers to court? Now we have a few more details about how they reckon they'll get their check made. Developer Pocket Pair published the details of a patent infringement lawsuit on their website last week, and it seems like Nintendo and the Pokemon Company are targeting 3 specific patents. An IP consultant running for Yahoo Japan picked up on one of these correctly back in September, and the big one, which they accelerated the approval of in July of this year, over 6 months after Palworld had actually been released, involves a mechanic where a player captures a character out in a field by throwing an object at it and then owning it. Pretty hard for creature collecting games to get around that one, that's for sure. One of the other patents also involves capturing creatures, and the other one deals with riding on top of creatures. Man, I really hope Nintendo does not try to patent the concept of mounts. Nintendo and the Pokemon Company are asking for a few things. 5 million yen in damages to each company, which, you know, is like 32,000 US dollars, which really isn't that much at all. But the big issue is that they're also asking for an injunction against Palworld, which basically means no more Palworld if Nintendo gets their way. That's really huge, and here's hoping Palworld find a way around this or through it, because it's genuinely bullshit that Nintendo is trying to pull this, threatening the existence of both this game and this studio with what seems to be some very petty lawfare. Moving on to Take-Two Interactive, and the big headline out of their investor update was that amid all the rumors of Grand Theft Auto 6 being delayed, the company put its foot down and basically said, nah, GTA 6 is planned to release in the fall of calendar 2025. We know that earlier this year, Rockstar Games put out a return to office mandate to really get things cracking, but the company also got in a hell of a lot of hot water for the immense crunch periods at the end of Red Dead Redemption's development. Will they be able to balance it out this time and keep their developers relatively sane and happy? Let's hope so. Sticking with Take-Two, remember a few months back when they made a bunch of cuts at their indie publisher Private Division, closed the BAFTA award-winning studio Roll7, responsible for the excellent Rollerdrome and Oli Oli World, along with Kerbal Space Program developer Intercept Games, and then they denied that they ever closed anything. Well, they did finally acknowledge to GamesIndustry.biz that they did close them, probably because they just don't care anymore. And the reason they don't care anymore is that they've sold off Private Division to a private buyer. No details on who the buyer is just yet. That'll come later, but whoever it is, they'll take hold of the upcoming in-development Project Division titles like Wedda's Tales of the Shire, as well as an upcoming game from Pokemon developer Game Freak, codenamed Project Bloom. Take-Two will hold on to no rest for the wicked, however. Here's what Strauss Zelnick had to say to GamesIndustry.biz about the sale. Quote, "We recently made the strategic decision to sell our Private Division label so we could focus our resources on growing our core business for the long term. The team at Private Division did a great job of supporting independent developers, and almost to a one, every project they supported did well. However, the scale of those projects was candidly on the smaller side, and we're in the business of making great big hits," end quote. What a genuinely shitty thing for a video game CEO to say, especially one with the amount of resources at his disposal that Zelnick has. Rather than foster the long-term growth and sustainability of this industry by incubating smaller projects, they'd rather just funnel everything they've got into more online content for GTA to sell more shark cards, or that goddamn Borderlands movie. Speaking of which, Zelnick spoke about that too, and here's what he had to say, quote, "We have selectively licensed intellectual properties. As you know, we've had a deal pending with BioShock, for example. Now, while the Borderlands movie was indeed disappointing, it was good for our catalog sales of Borderlands titles. So we would prefer to have a huge hit, so we are selective for exactly the reason that you just cannot control these outcomes, and we prefer to control our destiny. However, we will still license selectively," end quote. It's likely that the deal they struck would have only benefited them had the film been profitable. However, it's also been reported that Borderlands may lose somewhere in the vicinity of $30 million due to its poor earnings. The CEO of its production company, Lionsgate, a man by the name of John Feldheimer, also made some comments about the Borderlands film during his earnings Q&A. He said the film's failure, quote, "reflected an environment with less margin for error than ever before. Several of our other releases this quarter, though cushioned by financial models that worked as intended, didn't live up to either our standards or our projections. On Borderlands, nearly everything that could go wrong did go wrong. It sat on the shelf for too long during the pandemic, and reshoots and rising interest rates took it outside the safety zone of our usual strict financial models," end quote. Lionsgate have just a few other game adaptations in the work, including Outlast, Streets of Rage, and Monopoly. So yeah, good luck with those. A quick lightning round to finish off. Remember when Hideaki Itsuno left Capcom a short while ago? It was a huge deal because this was the guy who directed, and I am not making this list up, Dragon's Dogma 1 and 2, Devil May Cry 3, 4, and 5, Capcom vs SNK 2, Auto Modelista, Rival Schools, Power Stone, and a whole bunch more. Absolutely insane resume, and for him to walk away from Capcom, he likely had a very good reason to do so. Well, that reason appears to be big bags of cash, because this week he announced that he was leading the formation of Lightspeed's Japan studio, a subsidiary of Tencent. Itsuno put out a statement saying, quote, "With Lightspeed's strong development capability and global network, I look forward to creating original AAA action game titles together with the amazing team and building aesthetic and innovative experiences for the global player community. We welcome all talented and passionate game creators from the world over to join our vision," end quote. He's one of a number of high-profile Japanese game developers who have left their long-time Japanese employers to form new Chinese-funded studios as China continues to expand its investment into the Japanese games market. No clue what he might be working on next, and I don't imagine we'll hear about it anytime soon. Speaking of Chinese game publishers, boy oh boy, there is some crazy shit going down at NetEase. We know them best as the publishers of games like Diablo Immortal, Marvel Rivals, Destiny Rising, and a bunch of others, but the Chinese authorities know them for their money laundering. This week, 2 former senior executives and 7 more junior staff at NetEase were arrested by the Chinese police on charges of bribery and money laundering. Details are scarce, but apparently NetEase fired all individuals before referring the matter to police, and the scheme involves bribery and money laundering to the tune of $140 million US, which is nearly enough money to fully max out one character in Diablo Immortal. Nearly, by the way. You still need another 20 or 30 million to really hit that max item level. This is surely a story we'll hear more about in the future, so I'll keep you posted as details come in. From one beleaguered publisher to another, Ubisoft is being sued in the great state of California over The Crew, a franchise which has become a bit of a thorn in their side after uppity customers started making totally unreasonable demands like they should be able to play the game that they purchased. Unbelievable. The Crew was taken offline in March of this year, and while Ubisoft is working to make offline versions of The Crew 2 and The Crew Motorfest available, no such work is being undertaken for the original game, meaning that it is properly gone, with even physical versions being totally worthless due to the server-based nature of the game. The 2 plaintiffs were under the impression that when they bought the game, they could just keep playing it after that. Those naive fools, don't they understand how modern gaming works? Anyway, let's hope they win and get awarded an obscene amount of money that makes developers think twice about not building offline modes in games that could feasibly support them. And finally, Mass Effect is getting a TV show courtesy of Amazon. And if you said, hey, didn't they already make that one? Then you, my friend, have watched The Expanse. But no, this is an actual Mass Effect TV show. Plenty of Hollywood production and writing talent behind it, including Daniel Casey, who is set to write and executive produce the adaptation. Casey is most known for his work on the Fast and the Furious franchise, which means we all know what the Mass Effect TV show is going to be about. Family. Just don't mention that word in front of the Krogans, though. It's kind of a sensitive topic for them. All right, so what got announced last week? Not a whole lot, to be honest. At this point, most of the big publishers are keeping their powder dry ahead of the Game Awards, which is just 4 short weeks away. We did get an announcement for Hello Neighbor 3 though, another sequel to the janky but much loved horror stealth series from creator Nikita Kolesnikov and TinyBuild. No date for this one yet, but they presented their pitch and it certainly looks a lot more eerie compared to the cartoony vibes of the first two games. Once again, they're looking to simulate a town in real time with a variety of neighbors living out their lives and aiming for that ambitious systems-driven style of design where the game shapes itself by your actions. That's usually where a lot of issues can arrive with these sorts of games, but Kolesnikov has put it out there that development would be very open, which probably means early access, much like they've done in the past. Hey, you old enough to remember Virtua Fighter? Let's be real, you probably are. Google gives me very detailed audience demographics data. Anyway, I digress. The last main Virtua Fighter came out in 2007, but the series was a real breakthrough moment for fighting games since it was the first truly 3D fighter. It was designed by legendary Sega creator Yu Suzuki, who made Shenmue and Outrun and dozens of other Sega hits, but also Shenmue 3. We don't talk about that one. Anyway, in a recent VGC interview with a guy called Justin Scarponi, who was Sega's VP of Global Transmedia, he reiterated the fact that Sega is investing big in some of its legacy franchises. Most of the names he mentioned we knew about already: Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, Shinobi, etc. But he also made a point of saying, quote, "and we have another Virtua Fighter being developed," end quote. Not sure if he had the approval to drop that tidbit just yet, but it certainly made the fighting community very excited since Virtua Fighter still has an air of prestige despite not being around for quite some time. No further details for this one yet, but we will keep you posted. Speaking of member berries, remember when Overwatch 1 first came out in 2016 and we were all playing it, having the time of our goddamn lives, and it felt like that summer would never end? Yeah, well, Blizzard wants you to remember that too in light of everything that's happened with the launch of Overwatch 2. As such, Blizzard are bringing back a limited time game mode called Overwatch Classic, which will lock the playlist to the original 21 heroes and the original 12 maps and the original 6v6 match structure. No hero or role limits, just good old-fashioned Overwatch like we used to play when we were kids. They said this is separate to their plans to trial a return to 6v6 for Overwatch 2, and that they're not strictly planning for this to be a single event and will be, quote, measuring players' responses to inform our future plans, end quote. Time is indeed a flat circle. Looking forward to the eventual release of Diablo 3 Classic, featuring the real money auction house and everything. And I really wouldn't rule it out at this point for real. And finally, in a surprise release, Death Stranding is now out on Xbox, just in case there were any fervorous Kojima stands out there that were holding out for this one. The release coincides with Kojima Productions wholly acquiring the Death Stranding IP from 505 Games, similar to what Remedy did with Control, so they can decide what to do with it moving forward. Kojima Productions is of course working on Death Stranding 2, which is a PS5 exclusive, as well as a new tactical espionage game for PlayStation. Xbox does have them on the hook for a new horror game called OD, however, which is a collaboration with filmmaker Jordan Peele. Don't know too much about that one just yet, though we might get something at the Game Awards this year. Who knows? One delay this week, and it's for the terribly named Inzoi, which is the budding Sims competitor from Krafton going after the hyper-realistic approach. This one was originally slated to release at the end of the year, but it's now been pushed to 28th of March 2025. Fingers crossed it doesn't go the same way of Paradox's Life by You, which was the Sims competitor led by a former Sims boss that was eventually cancelled. EA needs some serious competitors to keep that franchise on its toes. And a slew of delistings this week from Sega, who have pulled dozens of classic game releases off digital storefronts. The Sega Mega Drive/Genesis bundles have been pulled, which contained over 60 classic titles, but these kinds of moves suggest that the company is probably planning on re-releasing a new, refreshed collection of these games soon, probably at a higher price, since that's just the way these things go, but I'd love to be proven wrong. So what came out last week? Well, Planet Coaster 2 we touched on briefly last week, with critics being pretty positive on it. It's still sitting at a strong 81 on OpenCritic. Since its release on Steam, however, it's landed at a mixed 59%. A lot of the hardcore builder fans and devotees of the series seem largely frustrated with the new UI design, which some suspect has been affected by the game's simultaneous release on console. This is quite a common pain point in this genre, as more traditionally PC-centric games have tried to broaden their audiences, so if you've yet to pull the trigger on this one, maybe have a look at some of those reviews to see whether it might be worth waiting for a future update. Lost Eidolon's Veil of the Witch is that game that's trying to transpose Fire Emblem-style turn-based tactics onto a roguelike structure, and that's now landed into early access at a very positive 81% of reviews recommending it. Sounds like there's still some teething issues to be sure, but the concept seems to have some legs judging by what quite a few people are saying. If you like Fire Emblem and you like roguelike games, then this is almost certainly for you. Mario and Luigi Brothership is the last big one from Nintendo this year, and the RPG has landed at a strong 79 on OpenCritic. A bit of a spread of opinion on this one though. VGC gave it 4 out of 5 stars, saying, quote, "The series' home console debut maintains the spirited character and action-oriented platforming of its predecessors, coupled with fantastic exploration and satisfying battle mechanics. Its campaign has some uneven moments, particularly around backtracking and obtuse puzzles, but overall it's a triumphant return for the Mario and Luigi series," end quote. GameSpot, on the other hand, were quite a bit more disappointed by it, citing issues of that dreaded RPG foible, padding. They landed landed on a 6 out of 10 saying, quote, "The length may have been born from a desire to create a big, meaty RPG, but in the end, it mostly serves to accentuate the simplicity in all aspects. Stretched over so many hours, exploration becomes dull, combat feels repetitive, and the story can't sustain itself. Mario & Luigi Brothership is well made and has some great ideas, but in breaking free of its handheld limitations, it becomes too ambitious for its own good," end quote. Ed's also been playing this one right now, and he's actually just done a write-up for it over on the Patreon, freely available to all, by the way, link below the like button. Ed can vouch for all of the things that have been mentioned here, but ultimately landed on a positive note with it, saying that it's carrying on Nintendo's worthwhile approach to putting its own unique spin on a tried and true genre. Switching gears now, Metro Awakening is basically the complete opposite of sunny and cheery, as it takes the depressing Russian post-apocalypse and moves it into VR. This landed very close to Mario & Luigi at a strong 78 on OpenCritic, with a similar spread of takes on it. Games Radar gave this one a 3 out of 5, saying, quote, "There are good moments to be had here with some strong action and gunplay. The first monster encounter is likely to remain burned into your brain for a while to come. But while those early, gloriously physical, bullet-scrounging gunfights feel great, the lack of variety thins the reward over time. And by not picking a lane more clearly between enjoyable VR action shooter and deep, thinky philosophical storytelling, Metro Awakening muddles the impact of both," end quote. On the flip side, the naturally VR-pilled folks at Upload VR gave this one a much more positive 4.5 out of 5, despite citing some of the same issues. Quote, "Vertigo Games has once again delivered a mesmerizing VR gaming experience, one that serves as a testament to the studio's proven record of creating adventures geared to provide atmospheric immersion and deep storytelling. Although it can get slightly repetitive at times and has a few graphical anomalies, Vertigo triumphs in creating a deeply immersive VR adventure that tackles some sensitive subjects along the way, and one that will haunt players long after the credits roll," end quote. Alright, time to talk about Slitterhead now, which is the new horror action game from Japanese indie outfit Boca Game Studio. This is the studio founded by Keiichiro Toyama, who is the guy who created iconic PlayStation horror games like Silent Hill and Siren, as well as the very cool gravity-bending action game Gravity Shift. This guy likes to make some weird and interesting shit, but without Sony and Konami's backing, it seems to have fallen a little flat. It's sitting at an OpenCritic score of 65, with some big spread in those scores. At the low end are many outlets who shared similar takes to GameSpot, who gave it a 4 out of 10. They said, quote, "The actual experience of playing Slitterhead is constant repetition of systems that aren't very engaging even in their first time. Across levels you'll see over and over again, telling a story that never makes much sense, with characters that feel like first draft lists of stereotypes. Slitterhead has a lot of fascinating ideas and compelling gameplay on the surface, but beneath it's just boring and banal. A bunch of scary looking monsters who turn out to be not very scary at all," end quote. Oof. On the flip side, you have a few folks who look past the issues to appreciate the weirdness that this game brings in its mechanics and presentation. Well Played gave it 8 out of 10, saying, quote, "It's a game that oozes self-assuredness and clarity of intent. No one of these things is without blemish, but each are distinctly present and deliberate all the same. It's a game out of time, out of lockstep with its peers, and barely able to pull together a human facade amid a wholly sympathetic lack of polish and violently terrifying abilities beyond its initial form," end quote. I've personally read a bunch of coverage for this one, and my big takeaway is that there seems to be something here, like a real Xbox 360 era vibe, where it's trying to do something singular and weird. If that hits for you, then you'll probably love it despite its flaws, but if it doesn't, then there is absolutely nothing here for you. Still, I love when games like this get made, so hats off to Toyama for having a crack, and let's hope he has another in the future. Ending on 2 games that critics seem to universally love. The first is Rise of the Golden Idol, which is the sequel to the game that adapted the vocabulary-based detective mechanics featured in Return of the Obra Dinn. It's a mystery game where you observe snapshots of scenes and try to decipher exactly what is happening with nouns and verbs you discover, which has the effect of pushing you to completely wrap your head around specific situations that seem like chaos at first and then feed into a greater narrative. The first game was really well received and won some awards, and the sequel seems to have lived up to that legacy because it's currently sitting at a mighty 84 on OpenCritic. Eurogamer gave it 4 out of 5 stars, saying, quote, "This is a brilliantly plotted thriller story stuffed with an enormous cast of memorable scoundrels, buffoons, and quietly tragic onlookers, and it's all backed up by wonderfully devised puzzles that really give your brain a good run around before you're able to prise open its hard-won secrets. It's everything you could hope for in a Golden Idol sequel and more," end quote. Slant was a bit more reserved in their words, but still handed it a healthy 4 out of 5, saying, quote, "Perhaps by its very nature as a sequel, Rise of the Golden Idol was never going to be the revelation that the original was, but by playing to the strengths of the first game's concept through even more intricate puzzle design, it offers a worthy follow-up in a spirited new setting," end quote. The second big critical success announced this week is Digital Eclipse's Tetris Forever. This is the third installment in the studio's Goldmaster series of interactive documentaries, where they told the historical stories of video games through new interviews with creators, a pile of archival materials like photos, documents, and videos, and of course, a bunch of playable video games and prototypes. I've never played any of these, but Ed is absolutely nuts for them and can't overstate how valuable they are if you love game history and culture, and it seems like their deep dive into Tetris has gone just about as well as the last two entries have, which is to say, extremely well. It's currently sitting at a mighty 84 on OpenCritic, with lots of kudos given to the documentary-style storytelling that somehow uncovers new revelations about the game, as well as previously hard-to-get versions of Tetris. Though not every iconic version of the game is in there, I'm guessing they had some trouble licensing games from a certain company that starts with N and loves them some courtroom drama. Shack News gave this one 9 out of 10, saying, quote, "If you think you've seen the best parts of the Tetris story, turns out there was plenty more compelling ground to cover. Tetris Forever tells a complete story, from the origins to the current Tetris company 40 years later. The new interview footage, filmic editing, curated game placement, and supplemental materials are arranged with tremendous skill and care. I can't gush enough about how Tetris Forever takes the concept and structure of Goldmaster and nails it, showing that weaving the museum content and gameplay together to tell a singular story leads to something that's fun and intellectually gratifying at the same time," end quote. VGC gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, saying, quote, "Along with Atari 50, Digital Eclipse has presented this timeline-based virtual documentary style to us 4 times now, and in no way, shape, or form is it getting old. If anything, it feels like it's just hitting its momentum. Such is the quality of Tetris Forever that it not only delivers a masterful tribute to one of the medium's most seminal series, it also has us eagerly guessing what Goldmaster Series 4 will be. Rest assured, we'll be there day one," end quote. So what's coming out this week? Well, first cab off the rank is Temtem Swarm, which hits Steam Early Access on the 13th of November. Temtem is one of many Pokemon-like games that have popped up in recent years, only with Swarm, the developers at Creamer are jumping into that vampire survivors thing. Is it too late? Have they missed the boat? Will its release be good enough to quell the fan base that was dismayed to see them make this genre jump? We'll check back in on it next week. Also releasing on the 13th is a game that's coming out of Steam Early Access called Songs of Silence. This one is a really pretty looking strategy game that's mixing a bunch of different concepts together. 4X, auto battling, even some card stuff thrown in there for good measure, because why not? Every indie game needs to be a card battler, right? The early access reviews have been mostly positive up to this point, so hopefully that should be a good indicator for its launch. It's also coming to PS5 and Xbox on the same day. We'll never get tired of shouting this one out. It's the game that dared to call itself 420 Blaze It 2 Game of the Year, Dank Dreams and Goated Memes, Wow out of 11, like and subscribe, Poggers Edition, is launching on PC on Thursday, November 14th. This is an Australian game we featured on Put This On Your Radar a while back because of just how insane it looks. The first one of these was created as a joke by one of the guys who made Crossy Road, and having played the demo, there's actually a surprisingly good shooter under there, so if you're in the mood for something very silly and some throwback vibes, then this one might be worth checking out. Runner-up for the most convoluted game title this week goes to Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake, which is launching for all platforms bar Switch on Thursday as well. This is the most beloved Dragon Quest game in Japan, which is probably why it's the first Square decided to remake in the 2D, 3D style that has gone down so well for them with games like Octopath Traveler and Bravely Default. Joining it on Thursday is LEGO Horizon Adventures for PS5, PC, and Switch. Feels like we've got a lot of Horizon lately, and clearly this is a franchise Sony thinks can transcend to a higher plane of existence with a LEGO crossover. Sadly though, I just don't think it's going to happen. Reviews for this one are already out and it's sitting at a fair 72 on OpenCritic. Reviews are very mixed, tending towards the negative end of the spectrum, like Eurogamer for example, who scored it 2 out of 5 stars and said, quote, "Too simple and childish for adults and too one note to convert the kids. LEGO Horizon Adventures does little to recommend it to either existing Horizon fans or series newcomers," end quote. You know, I've actually been playing through this one myself, and I have to echo those Eurogamer sentiments. I'm only around 4 hours in at this point, but man, it is already wearing very thin, owing to its simplicity, its repetitiveness, how few of the jokes land. I mean, I can see kids maybe getting a kick out of this one, but I think there's plenty of other stuff they'd rather be playing. So yeah, I don't know, maybe check this one out down the line when it goes on sale, but I really don't think this is a day one pickup. Quick shout out to Little Big Adventure Twinson's Quest, which is a complete remake of an early PC character action game that was kind of a big deal in Europe and was coming to all platforms on Thursday as well, courtesy of Microids and the game's original creator. Jumping over to next week, the two big games are Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 arriving on the 19th for PC and Xbox. The updates to this game seem to be making sure that they'll earn the right for that whole new title. There are more things simulated, more aerial jobs, you can land and leave your plane now, and don't forget this is the game that contains a one-to-one simulation of Earth. Sounds totally batshit insane. I don't know how they do this. And finally, on November 19th, we're getting Towers of Aghsbar, which is coming to PC and PS5 in early access format. This is an open world survival game with a pretty interesting vibe, a little bit prehistoric, a little bit supernatural with both charming and freaky monster designs. It has like Monster Hunter meets Breath of the Wild's energy, only with that whole crafty survival thing going on as well. So definitely keep that one on your radar if this looks interesting to you. It certainly is on ours, and we've got Austin checking it out sometime this week. Hey, we missed this one, but I like the look of it so much that I wanted to circle back to it, so put this on your radar. This is a game called Rogue Flight, and clearly it's a very stylish arcade-style aerial combat game that is riffing big on the sci-fi anime vibes of the late 80s and early 90s, namely things like Robotech and Macross. It's got that retro VHS vibe, which is absolute bait for more than a few people, myself included. It's got the wailing guitar soundtrack, and the Japanese voice cast are all anime veterans as well. Like, these people know exactly what they're doing with this release. As I said, it actually came out a few weeks ago, but it flew under our radar, and we want to set things right because it looks so fantastic and it plays really well. Reviews for it are almost 100% positive, and it's got a demo too, so you can try before you buy. If you like the look of it and you want to see more, then we've left a link to it over on our Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and on the Epic Games Store this week, you can still grab the multiplayer spy game Deceive Incorporated until Friday the 15th, as well as a little character unlock bundle for Apex Legends. After that, Konami has stepped in to give away the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, which pulls together the first 8 Castlevania games from the NES and SNES, including a spin-off called Kid Dracula that never actually made it outside of Japan. Some real classics here, especially the Super Castlevania 4, so worth dipping in and grabbing them if you've never had the chance. Since we're mid-month, the only other shout out at the moment is Prime Gaming, who right now are giving away the GOG version of Tomb Raider Anniversary Edition, which is a pretty nice remake of the first Tomb Raider game released back when, remakes were still cool and we weren't tired of them. Don't forget, you can also still pick up games like Guardians of the Galaxy, Mafia Definitive Edition, Death's Door, and A Plague's Tale: Innocence while you're there. Our feel-good story for the week relates to a topic near and dear to my heart: NFT games, or more specifically, ruining them. Recently, Ubisoft released an actual NFT game called Champions Tactics Grimoria Chronicles, and yes, that is the single worst name for a game you've ever heard, but that's a good thing because it kind of serves as a warning label, so I like it. Anyway, it's your standard NFT cash grab where the gameplay is anemic because the focus is on pulling in people who don't give a shit about actual video games, only their functionality as proxy financial instruments. So this game launches last week, and very soon after that, a particular user who moonlights between various in-game handles begins shooting up the leaderboards. This person apparently found some sort of hack that allows them to automatically win as soon as they get match made with other players. How many times did they do this, you might wonder? 56,000 times, rendering the entire game all but unplayable for the 15 people who are trying to actually play this video game. One Discord user said of the situation, quote, "It is absurd that a company in late 2024 have a game unplayable for days because one guy decided to ruin the game. I am sorry, the level of incompetence here is alarming," end quote. No, my friend, the level of incompetence here is Ubisoft. All right, ladies and gents, that's the show for the week. I do note that there was a really interesting Bloomberg interview with Phil Spencer that went up just as we were finalizing this script. Because I'm traveling, we don't have time to add it here, so we'll cover it next week. Hopefully, though, we gave you enough good stuff this week. So if you think that we did, we'd love it if you'd hit the like button on the video. And if you'd like to come back and do it all again next week, be sure to subscribe and ding that notification bell. Looking forward to being back home because we've got some big reviews and previews coming up, so stay tuned for those. A big thanks for stopping by, and also a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Manscaped. Always exciting to hear about new stuff from this video sponsor, Manscaped. They are, after all, the undisputed market leaders in below the waist and above the neck grooming. If you want to take care either up here or down there, then chances are good that Manscaped has just the right product for you. Their latest product is one I have been personally looking for a while now, and it's the Chairman Pro. It's an electric fold shaver that gives you all the precision you'd want with all of the convenience that comes from an electric shaver. It comes in this very handsome and sturdy case, and in it you'll get not only the Chairman Pro itself, but 2 interchangeable blades, one that gives you a super close, clean shave, and the other one that lets you maintain a bit of rough stubble. Both heads are designed with skin-safe technology to help reduce razor burn and irritation, so your skin feels smooth and comfortable after every shave, reducing redness and discomfort. To make things even more comfortable, the Chairman Pro is waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. And to make things even more convenient, the Chairman Pro gets up to 75 minutes of runtime on a single charge. But wait, there's more. The Chairman Pro package is packed with helpful goodies, like the Power Shave Gel for an even smoother shave, as well as the Face Soother Aftershave Serum, which hydrates your skin to reduce redness and defend against ingrown hairs and razor bumps. This bad boy is brand new, and it's the most advanced product that Manscaped have ever released. It's a big upgrade to anyone's grooming game, and best of all, you can get it for 20% off plus free shipping when you visit manscaped.com/skillup. That discount will automatically be applied when you visit that link. I've left that link in the description below, as well as the pinned comment. That's manscaped.com/skillup for 20% off plus free shipping. A perfect Christmas gift maybe, or just a nice way to treat yourself. Thanks Manscaped for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.